everybody.
Hello, hello. Are we live? Are we live?
I hope we're live. It's lovely to see you all if you're live, hopefully.
Yes. I'm not seeing anyone in the chat, but that's okay.
No, me neither. So maybe just have to wait.
Just quiet.
See, or we got all the time zones wrong.
Oh, there we go. We've got Chris Everett in the house. Welcome, Chris. Hello, hello. Well, welcome to our monthly pattern tool chat, Tricky Thursday live. We have lots of names for this little segment that we do here together. My name's Tricia. I'm the owner of Creative Costume Academy. I call myself your pattern nerd friend. Let us know if you can hear us okay, if you can see us okay. Technology is always fun and more.
Yes, I've got hello Victor, hello T, and hello Julian Crates. Lovely to hear you all, or have you here, and they can all hear us. Yes, I've got. And just if it sounds a bit confusing, we can't see each other's chats really. So
Right.
yes, so it's always a bit exciting to see what the other person can see in the chat.
To see what everyone.
Yes.
Oh, good. Thank you, Tricia. Thank you, Chris, letting me know that the sound sounds good on my end. I hope it's good for you.
Yes. Yeah, it's always.
If you like this, if you like our little chats, please push that like button, if you will, because that helps tell YouTube that you like this kind of content, and it pushes that out hopefully to more people, more pattern nerds that we can chat with. And then Charlotta, do you want to give a quick introduction? This is Charlotta.
Yes, hello, I'm Charlotta. This is Tricia from Creative Costume Academy. And today we are talking about a topic which I think would probably be interesting to everybody, whether you're a complete beginner, whether you've been at it for quite a while like us, or whether you're trying to up your game. We're going to talk about tools, sewing tools, pattern cutting tools, but we're also going to talk about paper as part of his tools, because that's sort of one of the things we take for granted, but there's actually quite a lot of options. So we're going to cover everything from the tools for use every day to our sort of splurges which are worth the money maybe, and also stuff we wouldn't maybe buy again. And I've just donated all the stuff I don't use to a charity shop, so I can't show you anything, but I can talk about it.
I'm curious, what are your
Yes.
And we won't get into it because I think we've done a couple lives now about books, because there's so many great book resources. So if you're interested in books, please look to our previous videos. We have a couple out there about books and things. So we're going to focus on tools and paper today. Hi everyone, we've got Marta, Helen, Sandra on my side, and Debbie. Welcome. Hello, good to see you guys.
And as always, we would actually love to know in the chat, what are your favorite tools? What is the tool you really regretted buying, maybe spending money on? And what's your biggest sort of splurge which is worth it? You know, what's a fancy tool which you actually love and use every day?
Yes.
And of course, we're also here for questions. If you've got any questions about tools, let us know in the chat. And I already got one from Tricia, from one of my students. Oh, and Victor saying he can't hear Tricia. So let me try something. Victor, I think I know what the problem is.
No, I'll talk.
Yes, please talk.
Hello everyone. I'm Pattern Nerd Friend. I'm wearing my safety pin shirt today because I love, probably my favorite tool ever to exist on the planet is a safety pin. How do you not love safety pins?
Is there any better, Victor?
Yeah, let us know.
Yes.
You guys, I'm telling you, the amount of technology that goes into not only like showing up on social media like this, but just also, you know, hosting our online schools. We both have an online school. If you're interested in learning more about pattern making, you can definitely check us out with that. And then I do have mentioned in my description, just as a heads up, we'll just get it so I don't forget to mention it later. But I am hosting the first ever Pattern Con
in the world.
First ever. It will be August 16th and 17th of this year. It has been a whirlwind of putting this event together, but tomorrow we have our first ticket blocks go on sale for our volunteer tickets. We only have 30 of those available, and then our full general admission tickets will go on sale next Friday. We do have a party list that we have already been collecting names. And we have more people on that list than we have tickets available. So if you are at all interested in checking it out and possibly grabbing a ticket and joining us, we would love to have you, but please make sure you are on the party list, because we will be releasing the tickets all at the same time to make it fair for everyone to have an opportunity to get one to the party list first. So that is the only way that for the first 24 hours, it will only be available to the party list until we don't have any tickets left. So they could all go in that first 24 hours. After that, then we will have them on the website. But yeah, tickets start tomorrow. So that link is in my description if you haven't already jumped on the list to find out more about that.
And it's a great event. I've seen all the stuff you've been sharing on Instagram and on YouTube a bit. And yeah, so it sounds like a great weekend for us pattern nerds. And it's also maybe a nice way,
pattern nerds unite.
because I think we're quite niche to certain degrees. There's lots of sewers out there, but we're a little bit smaller. So it's a really nice way to meet other people, isn't it, as well, if you feel a bit alone maybe.
Yeah, I'm really excited about just everybody coming together, and we did that retreat, earlier this year, and everybody just it was just a big love fest, It's just like we're all into the same thing and excited about it and learn from each other, and friends were made, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Sandra said, lasting 24 hours. The Fantabulous Fit Weekend only lasted 45 seconds. That's right, Sandra. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's why I'm saying get on the party list, so that hopefully you have an opportunity to grab one of the tickets. We don't know how it's going to go. This is the first year. So
but that's also it's nice to be part of something when it starts, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. Carolyn says, I love my tailor's clapper and my pretty paperweights. Oh yeah, paperweights. And that also holds fabric in place for cutting. Yes, wonderful. Hi, Gina. Welcome. Good to see you. So yes, pattern weights, tailor. I just got a tailor's clapper. Do you have a tailor's clapper?
I don't actually have one, but I've got a heavy duty iron. So yes, I use that a lot of the time. But I have a lovely book from the 1950s, all about pressing, my most niche book, but it actually shows you how to make a clapper. So I'm going to make one, just to try it out, yeah. But it's a great tool. If people don't know, it's basically mostly made out of wood, and it just helps you if you pressing something like even like a denim or something which doesn't like to lay flat. You can really push that, open up its seam, because I'm sure you've all tried seams where you press it and it just jumps up again. Yeah.
So what the clapper actually does, and I did do a video about it. I did a Tricky Thursday about it when I got my clapper. But because it's the hardwood. So what happens when you press something is when you press it and it's hot, if you move it while it's still hot, it could go back to the shape that it started as. But if you wait till it cools, then it's more likely to stay in that how you press it. But who has that kind of time when we're pressing things? So what the tailor clapper does is it's a hardwood. So you put it on, you steam and you iron and press, and then you put the clapper on, and the hardwood absorbs the heat. So it cools the fabric down. So then it's more likely to stay how we pressed it. Plus it also offers that weight to hold it down.
Yes. In the book I'm going to use, they actually use old paperback novels, which is interesting, with fabric on top. That's so quite make and mend. And actually this mention of clappers brings me to what a tool I would love to have, and I haven't got really the space or the money for at the moment, but that would be a proper professional pressing station with a vacuum ironing board at standing level, so really high, so it goes up to rib cage. Because I've got a steam station which is sort of semi-professional, so that works fine, but having a full pressing station, I would love that. That would be my all-time splurge tool, but that's like talking a sewing machine price. I think.
I can already tell this hour is gonna.
Yeah. Have you got a pressing station, Tricia?
Do I have a pressing station? Yeah. I kind of do. I don't have a vacuum, but I did when I was taking some classes at UNC Chapel Hill. They had made their own iron table, And so it was wide enough to press fabric, because you know how you
Yes.
want to be pressing yards and yards of fabric. So it's more than 60 inches wide, and it's about a yard in depth and covered with the muslin. So you can press a whole yard of fabric at the same time, which I thought was genius.
That's great.
So I have one of those built. And then I have a gravity feed heavy duty iron. Heavy steam iron is no, you can't once you go with the heavy steam gravity feed iron.
I have to say, because I've got really weak wrists, so the one I have is a little bit lighter, because the proper industrial ones, they weigh a ton, but that's why you don't need your clapper, because you got that and your vacuum. And vacuum basically sucks the moisture out and cools it down instantly, so your seams stay flat.
It probably also helps with that cooling, like what I'm talking about.
And the iron sort of glide while you're ironing, but as soon as you take it out, it's so heavy. So I do actually like my semi-industrial one, because it's a bit lighter. But yeah, that table is like, ooh. Actually, saying that, I've got one thing I invested in I haven't got a table like you, but I've got a super-sized ironing board, which you can do really high, because most normal ones aren't very high. So I got one you can sort of, it's probably the same length as you, it's not quite as wide, but that makes a real difference. These are sort of tools you wouldn't think, they're sort of all like...
Yeah, having a good iron is super, super helpful to your sewing, for sure. And for me, another tool that I probably didn't even think about until we started talking about this, and you're saying like height, for me being tall, you guys remember, I'm almost 6 feet tall, I'm 5'11", so any tape cutting surface, ironing, sewing, all of that, patterning. This table that I'm at right now is actually my pattern table, and it goes up to it hits my hip right here, my lower hip, my upper hip, I mean, and it's perfect. It's funny because my short friends, because I'm tall again, my short friends are like, it's like at their armpits, they're like, this is way too tall. But it's great for me. I'm not having to bend down. So this table that I'm at, my patterning table, is one of my most favorite, and a big cutting table. Like, not have to cut things on the floor or on a...
But again, it's the height and the size. So again, you want like at least the width of a roll of fabric, and ideally big enough as well, because it is sort of and the reason is, especially in patterning, when you're sitting down, your angle of vision goes wrong. So if you stand up, it's more comfortable. You don't go funny in the neck, but you can also see everything much better. So it's really, that's sort of where I've got at the moment. I've got an IKEA one, which you can go high and down, and I bought the biggest table, and that's like a cheap option of doing it. But nowadays you can probably get them quite cheap, but last time I looked, it was so expensive. I do IKEA.
Pam DeArmas says, I've gotten a gravity feed iron since joining Tricia's group, since joining my group, and I will never be without one again. Now, I always have this funny story. I was living with somebody for a while, and it was a mom and dad's house, and I was sewing. I was working downstairs, and we were staying there temporarily, and I didn't want to set up my full gravity feed iron at their house because I knew I wasn't going to be staying long, so I used her iron, which is just a domestic iron that shuts off. That auto shut off is the most annoying thing.
And they take ages to heat up compared to a proper one.
So I would have to, I had like it was down in the basement, and I had like my cutting area, I had my machine, and then I had the iron set up. And then, so what I would do is I would like set up at the cutting station, and then I would, on my way to the sewing machine to sew the seam, I would like kind of do the iron so it would turn on, and then I'd go sew, and so I would come back so it would be hot. But it was a whole thing I had to do. And then she came down, and she was like, oh my God, Trish, the iron, because I was like at the machine. She's like, the iron is on. I'm like, yeah, I know, I'm working, I'm sewing. And she's like, do you want me to turn it off? I'm like, please don't turn it off. So yeah, that is one thing for me, like the industrial iron, gravity feed iron is
and
huge.
I don't think they're that much more expensive than a nice domestic iron. And the good thing is
not compared to a good one.
No, and it's also the steam is really controlled. You can it's much stronger than any domestic iron you're ever going to use. And I never
weight.
but also like the steam is just nice and strong.
Way more
Yeah.
even and more concentrated.
And you know, when you have it,
like
yes,
those, domestic irons.
and now, like, you know, with domestic iron, you keep on pressing, and then suddenly everything comes out, and you get these awful stains. So yeah, so that's definitely a splurge tool, which is really worth it.
Sure.
And it's also gonna be one, you know, like other things you only use for pattern cutting. That's something you're going to use to take care of your clothes, you know, and it makes the biggest difference.
Yeah, for sure.
I love ironing.
Sure. So I've got some people, I'm sure you're getting some too. Robin says her favorite tool is the seam ripper, of course. Almost no mistake can't be undone without a seam ripper as long as you don't cut anything. Yeah, that great point. I mean, how do you not have a seam? But I'll tell you, I don't really use seam rippers.
Do you use razor blades?
I do use razor blades if I'm taking a lot of things out, or I use my snips.
Yeah.
I have like snips that I usually wear around my neck, and I just use my snips. The main thing I use seam rippers for is opening buttonholes.
Oh yes, they're really good for that, because that's actually a splurge tool I haven't got. People like the buttonhole chisel.
I was gifted one of those, and I rarely use it because I'm so used to using I'm so worried I'm gonna like cut the wrong part. But they are cool. When I have a lot of buttonholes to open, I have used it. But yeah, the buttonhole cutter things, they are cool. But
I think it's one of those splurge tools. When you use them, are probably great. But if you just
if you're doing a lot of buttonholes, it's not.
Yeah,
really
but it's like not an essential. And actually, with a seam ripper, it's worth getting a nice one. Because I need to get new snips, so I'm using a seam ripper at the moment, and it's just like an old one. It's just not sharp enough. Like the nice thing about snips are like they're just super sharp. Yeah,
I get the fine tip points, and I mean, I use them for everything. I don't think I have them up here right now because I've been sewing downstairs, but yeah, my fine tip, and I just wear them on an elastic around my neck. That's like my if I'm sewing, I have those, and they have a finer point, but I use them for everything. So eventually they do go dull. So I usually end up getting a new pair every year and a half.
Yes.
And they're just, you know.
I like the, I don't like this, well, you call them snippers, but I like the ones with proper handles. So like the Kai, the tiny Kai ones, so like super pointy. And what I like about snips or tiny scissors is they're a bit more controlled. So if you know the fabric well, you can literally just sort of cut in between the seams, can't you? And so slide it too. But yeah, because I inherited a whole box of razor blades from my husband's grandmother. And you know, I don't know, she must have done a lot of seam ripping, but it's like, you might use one or two, like a proper sort of box, just lots and lots of razor blades.
Oh, I'm a big fan. We always had razor blades in the costume shop. We would always use razor blades. But I only pull out the razor blade if I'm like taking out a lot. If it's just one seam that I sewed, then I'm just using my snips. But if it's like I'm opening up a whole thing, or it's a long, dress or something, then I pull out a razor.
And I guess
there's those scalpel. I think that one's downstairs too. But the scalpel.
Oh yes, so it's a bit safer, isn't it?
Those are really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess people used to remake clothes a lot more, so you probably used to undo whole, dresses and then redo them. And nowadays I don't do that much unpicking, thankfully.
Yes.
Most of the time.
Sandra says, I can't live without a laser line on my sewing machine. Interesting.
Ooh, that sounds like a splurge tool.
I know. I don't know if I've ever experienced that. After that, I have a little tool that shows about 14 different seam measurements. Oh, I think I have one of those too.
Is the laser line instead of your tape? Or instead of engraved lines?
Is that what it is, Sandra? Is it like instead of having the marks for the seam allowance? Is that what it's for? I'm curious. And I also want to mention, I have one of those, and I don't know. I think it's downstairs. Most of my working area, my sewing area is downstairs. This is like, I use this for patterning or teaching, but not so much. I think I have one of those that you're talking about, Sandra.
Is it like a gauge, like a little metal thing, and you slide it left and right?
It's a little metal thing with like different, I think, if I'm thinking of the same tool. One thing I want to mention before we go too much farther, turning off oven. Carolyn says about about the iron turning off. Tricia said, I just had to go turn off my iron.
Okay.
Watching this. I know that is the only thing about having an industrial iron is you need to make sure to turn it off.
But mine is quite.
If there's one I recommend. So the ones that I've gotten them off of Amazon. I think Wawak also, if you're in the US, sells them. Sapporo is the brand that I have, but there's another brand that's similar in price to that. What is your brand that you have?
Oh, it's a typical English one. Karen in my chat, she has got a Rowenta. They're really good.
Rowenta.
Yeah.
That's a domestic though, yeah.
Yeah, mine might be a Philips. I will look it up and we'll put it on Instagram because it is a really good steam station. I've now had it for 10 years and it's going really well.
Sandra says it's the laser so she can sew straight.
Oh yeah, did you mention the Battistella?
The what?
Battistella. They are the Italian ones used in the UK.
Oh.
I will put it in the chat. Okay. Yeah, for some reason they're all Italians, our slow for steam irons. If you want to have like a hybrid, Miele, who do washing machines and stuff, they do a foldable, and it's about, it used to be about £1,000, so $1,300, and it's a full steam station with a full vacuum table. It's a bit smaller and it folds, so it's really small and you can put it in the cupboard.
That's cool.
And it has a big, like 20-litre container of water. It takes a little bit longer to warm up compared to industrial one. But if you let it warm up for like 20 minutes, it is quite good.
And Gina says, yes, Wawak has one on sale today.
Okay,
that's awesome. Yeah, I'm telling you though, once you go industrial,
you want
back, I'm just saying. So I wanted to mention this. I got kind of distracted with what you guys were saying, but I am a girl. Look, we're going to talk about tools. We're going to talk about stuff we love. Obviously, not everybody can go out and get a steam station or industrial iron or have a custom-made tall pattern table. And I'll tell you, for years, probably 6 years, I was actually making patterns for fashion designers and things on a fold-out table that I got at Walmart that had a seam, and I had to like move my mats around. I am definitely a girl that I will use what I have and make it work, so we are sharing things with you, but you absolutely don't have to have any of these things. There's always things that you can kind of, like, I was using that domestic iron because I was like, well, it's not going to be worth it for me to set up the one that I really love, and I'll just make it work. I came up with a system that made it work. So yeah, I just want to mention that if you don't have all these tools, or if you can't get access to these tools, don't feel like you can't still sew or make patterns or anything. You just acquire them over time. Charlotta and I both have been doing this for a really long time, so we have things that we like and can recommend. But
that is actually quite true. I think there's the essential tools what you need. I would say a good pair of shears for fabric, not as good pair of shears for paper, a pair of snips, and really you only need, I use this ruler, which is basically a quilting ruler or Japanese sewing ruler, for 90%.
My equivalent for that.
Yeah, it's like, that's 90% of everything I do, and then the other 10% is that. And that's,
I have one of those, and I don't use it. I need to start using it.
But I only really, because even curves you often do with that. So this is actually 10%. It comes in handy when it's handy. But if you were starting out, that's all you need.
You can seam allowance with that one too, right?
Yeah, that's what I use it for. You have to have a curve or seam allowance on a curve. That's when it's a bit faster. Or if you want to get your 90-degree really perfect.
Say those are your favorite tools, your top tools?
Yeah, and top tools, essential tools I use every day. And then it's just pencil and, actually, I use cheap, no, that's not even cheap, they're really expensive nowadays, but, I use Brit stick instead of expensive tape and stuff. I think for most of us it's paper, something to make lines with, scissors and a pen. That's all you really need.
I'll share my favorite. So same here, this see-through, if I had to choose only 2 tools for pattern making, it would be this ruler and the needle wheel.
Yes.
Like, you don't have to have a needle.
Yeah, I think if you need one tool, it's a good ruler actually. That's all you really need, and some stationery, isn't it?
The needle wheel makes life so much, for patterning specifically, makes life so much easier, I feel.
Yeah, I've always been
over this. I would say the ruler, like more,
and
like a see-through ruler, because with the thing with something that's opaque is that you're not going to be able. It's a lot easier to add your finger.
Yes, so it needs to be a see-through ruler with ideally 90-degree lines, which they have. Yeah. So you can do over 90 degrees. And what both Tricia and mine have, they have 1 centimeter lines going across, and then they have smaller. I think yours is even better because yours got them all across. But that basically means you can do all the seam allowance, button stands, hems, whenever you want to do parallel lines. And what's nice about these, they're so light, so they're really easy to move.
I really like, I just saw it, I like to have like a little one. I have these like in sewing drawers for like setting seam allowances and things like that. This is also really good.
And the smaller one is really nice for doing detailed work. And you know what, mine disappeared, like certain things in our house do, a few months ago, and I haven't replaced it yet because, you know, this is, you can get away with just a single ruler if you have to.
True, yeah. And then the other, and then my snips. Like if I'm going to work, I have my snips around my neck, I have a measuring tape, I have a needle in my bra, and I have my pin cushion wrist thing. I've got my ruler and my, you know, that is like my pencil and, you know, obviously those are my essentials.
Did you just say you have a needle in your bra?
Yes, I
did. Yeah, it took me a second to get to. I was thinking, yes, but I know you got a safety.
I put it right here.
Yeah.
So it doesn't pull out.
Yeah.
And if you don't put it in your bra, it can pull out. Yes. You put it in your bra. It's my booby trap. My booby. So if I hug someone, they get stabbed. But that way you don't lose it.
Yeah, I suppose this is a very pattern cutting specific conversation, isn't it? We will know what you mean.
Talk about paper. There was a couple other. Let me see. There was a couple other things that people were saying. Hi, pressing 7 yards of fabric as an impediment to my sewing. So yeah, having a big iron table will help with that. And once I saw it, I was like, oh my god, I want this in my life. But you know, and then Carolyn said, as soon as I get them set up, adjustable tables for my sewing machine and serger, but it's summertime in Michigan, so yeah, she's spending some time outside. And then there was somebody said, Anne said her favorite tool is the wrist pin cushion, which I like the magnetic ones, and I used to have one that was amazing. It was such a good magnet, and I lost it. You know, it ran out wherever it went. It disappeared, and I got another one, and it's just not as strong. And I'm like throwing pins, and I just use this because again, and that's strong enough that it magnetizes all the tools. So so it's like I had a teacher that hated magnets. Yeah, she was great. She said no magnets by the machines.
I sort of do get it because it's when everything you touch is magnetic, isn't it? So
I get it too.
Yeah,
I actually worked somewhere and I thought it was a genius idea. You know, they sell them at like office supply stores, and you can buy. They're like the size of a business card, and it's a magnet, and it's meant for you to like make business card magnets for your business or whatever. But they have a sticky on one side.
Oh,
so you take the sticky and you put it on your machine, so then you have a little magnet on your machine. But yeah, my teacher hated that. She didn't want you to.
And the other thing as well, you can
sitting everywhere around your machine.
I don't know if it's a thing in the US, but a lot of the big sewing rooms, they always have like a band around your sewing machine.
Yes.
For the needles. That's the sort of magnet-less option. So you literally do a little sort of collar for your sewing machine out of a nice calico fabric, and you can pin all your pins in there.
Actually, when I bought my brother machine, it had one on it. So
and they are sort of useful because otherwise you just put them on the table or something and they get lost. And actually, talking about pins, that's actually one where it's worth to buy nice ones. So
Yeah.
I like the super.
I am kind of picky about my pins.
Yeah, super fine stainless steel, extra longish. So I don't like short
extra
ones.
long.
Yeah.
Or the glass head pins too, so you can iron them and they won't melt.
Yeah, I've got, you can iron these as well. Yeah, the tiny ones.
See, I like to have the heads on the pins though, otherwise I lose them in things.
Oh yes, you do sometimes. Sometimes you stitch them, then you stitch them inside.
Yes, and when we used to get costumes made in Belgium for the show that I was working at in Vegas, and they would have pins like inside, so we wouldn't see them.
Oh.
And I had a couple stab people like during performances, so it's like a kind of a phobia to have. So, yeah,
it's like people
no head.
Hate, like it's a phobia having pins in your mouth. Some people get really angry about it. That's similar, isn't it? But if you had one bad experience, you're never going to do this again.
Yeah, true.
But yeah, going for stainless steel, extra thin pins, where it has to have a glass head, not a plastic head, or a little metal head. And they are quite expensive, I always think, for a little box of pins. But they are really worth it. Because you get these shorter ones. And sometimes, when you buy something, it's got a pin and a short pin. And when you put it on your magnet, and then every time you pick it up, it's a short pin, which is completely useless.
Yes. I know.
Or also, actually, cheap pins bend. So even, these were just from the craft shop, and I thought, they look like they're really sturdy. They're quilting pins, and they just bent. And my normal ones, they never bent.
Wow.
So it's interesting, isn't it? It must be just better steel or something, like harder steel.
Yeah.
So that's really worth getting.
End up bent, and I try to throw them away, or if they get dull, I'll throw them away as I find them. But
yeah, I think I bought a really big box in Switzerland. And they just they've been lasting for years, and it's sort of like it was a shock at the time, and it was like, that was worth it. Because one thing I don't use, somebody gave me these, these
wonder clips.
Yeah, and I get the principle for them, but I just
I'll tell you, we're getting into sewing stuff again, but that's okay. We're talking about all things. I'll tell you, I got those as well because a lot of people were using them on socials and I had never used them. And I'll tell you, I use them for very specific things. So if I'm sewing leather anything that you don't want to put pins in, they work really well for. They also work really well for like if you're sewing netting or mesh. I call it like when you're sewing air, like there's no fabric, but so it's really hard to pin.
Yeah, and you suddenly saw and you realized it's completely missed, isn't it?
It didn't catch anything. So I use those wonder clips for those kinds of projects, and because what I was using before I got those is just some binder clips from the office supply store. I just happened to have a bunch of them, small ones, small ones. But I rarely use them, but when I'm working on stuff.
So I think it's one of those things where they're great if you do that a lot. Yeah, because I was saying leather. I can imagine leather because leather is a pain. But yeah, for me it's pins. And actually, pins are also great for pattern cutting because I know some people use weights for tracing through, and I always like to pin everything together. And
somebody, I forget who it was now, did mention weights.
Yes,
so
right at the beginning.
I have not bought any specific. So here's another one, like use what you have. So what I use for weights is usually jars. I don't think I have any of my jars up here because they're mostly downstairs. But this was like a gift card box, and I put change in it, so it's heavy.
Yeah.
And I use like old glass jars, and I put change in those, and those are my weights. So you don't have to be fancy. You don't have to spend a lot of money sometimes to get the, and then I'll use whatever. I'll use my tape thing. I'm like, what else do we have? I can weigh it down. But that's what and the other reason I like using the money in the jars is because I sew for work, right? So if I have money on my work, I think of it kind of as like a sentimental thing that it's going to bring prosperity. I don't, who knows? But why not? It can't hurt.
No, I have to say, having used proper weights for quite a lot of my jobs. They are nice because they're like square and they have a handle so you can really smooth things out. But
those are nice.
Yeah, they are lovely. But
they're
it's one of
pricey, though.
Yes, it's sort of again like I actually now I have some sort of glass weights from I think from a kitchen shop or something, and they work really well for basic cutting out.
And you can like there's some really nice people I know, like Raven Marine. She has really nice weights that she makes, and she puts cool things in there. And then you can use washers. A lot of people use washers like from the hardware store. And if you tie ribbons around them, so it's like maybe 5 washers, it adds a little bit more weight instead of just the one. So yeah, there's a lot of different things.
You know what also be good is small weights. Like for dumbbells. Because some of them are flat, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yes, I was just thinking of
interesting idea.
Things you could use.
So, should we talk about paper?
Yes, let's talk about paper. So I would imagine both Tricia and I are you cross and dot?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Cross and dot.
So
alphanumeric, cross and dot, blue dot, whatever you want to call it. This with the grid on it is my favorite.
Yeah. And actually, weirdly enough, I always use it on this side.
Do you really?
Yeah. And that's how I've been taught. Like you don't this I think, and you can get this completely plain in the UK as well without the cross and dot. We like to use it. I prefer using a right side because it doesn't distract. So if
for me, unless I'm doing a scale up like a Luderlo or a scale up your pattern, I don't like to have the grid. But the grid helps me when I'm drafting because I can visually see when things are off,
I see what, but I always find it, unless you're working with the grid exactly, it always looks off. And I think it's when you can get a bit seduced by the grid and because it's like printed, so it's not quite fine enough. Not quite precise enough for me. But what is nice about having one side which is printed, that's your wrong side as such. So whenever you're laying patterns out, all the patterns should be completely plain. And unless you're mirroring things, but it's a really good visual indicator. But yeah, nobody I've ever worked with has used this side on top, which is maybe it's an English thing. Yeah. So but it's a lovely weight basically, and it's see-through enough, but it isn't so thin that it drives you mad. Right.
But I will say, and the reason that I use it is because that I learned with it. So when I was in school, I like I said, I visually like the grid. I use it to just kind of check myself, check references. But it is not absolutely imperative that you have the blue dot or dot and cross. There are other options. It is a little, pricier than just paper, obviously.
The reason we really use it is because it comes really wide and it comes in rolls and it's a nice weight, which is the right sort of weight, and it's just so see-through enough you can trace through things. But I've bought like a cheaper version of it before. That works fine as well. It's just a little bit thinner, but that's really long. It's like a packing paper, and that's great as well.
Yeah. So I mean, but don't again let that stop you if you're not able to get it or you can't afford to buy it or things like that, because you can really use anything. I know I have used myself newspaper, I've used wrapping paper, I've used plain brown paper.
Yeah, the plain brown paper on rolls is great because it's a bit wider, isn't it? But I would never say don't spend money. Sometimes in like sewing shops or craft shops you can buy something similar like to that and you get like a really little pack and it's about a tenner and you just think don't spend your money on that. Basically any paper is good. If you're really getting into it, this is great because you got a roll, it's the right weight, it works beautiful, it can be pinned again and again, it can be folded, it won't rip very easily, but it's lightweight enough.
You can tape it, you can take the tape off of it, and it just works really well.
Yes, so it is lovely. And we were talking before we started our live that quite a lot of our students have been talking about Swedish tracing paper. What do you call it? Swedish tracing paper. Tracing paper, yeah, the same here. And neither of us.
I've actually never used.
No.
but a lot of people like that. I think it's more like an interfacing almost.
Yes, so it's like a non-woven, so you can use it straight for your trowel. But from what I've read, it's because it is like a non-woven. It's like with, it's also a thing like with shopping bags you get sometimes, like. I can't quite imagine it working for anything, but I can imagine like it for collar or cuff. But it won't drape even like calico doesn't drape a lot, but.
Right.
It'd be sort of, I guess you can check the size.
How well you can tape.
Yeah. And I was thinking, how do you do the changes afterwards if you do have to cut and slash? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I wonder, it's one of those things where you do your paper pattern and you do your changes on it, and then you trace your sewing pattern through on the Swedish paper, and it just saves the step of putting it on calico after it. Maybe the people who can use it can tell us whether why they love it.
Yeah. Are you a Swedish tracing paper person?
And also, I imagine it's quite expensive, isn't it?
Yeah. And then we were also saying some people like freezer paper or butcher paper, right? You said it's called.
Yeah, in Germany. Well, I'm sorry, in England. I'm not in Germany. In Germany, I'm tired. I've been teaching all day. It's butcher's paper here, but the only thing I don't like about it is quite a narrow roll. So a great thing is it's see-through, so it's great when you're doing sewing patterns, you can trace them through, but you're a little bit limited by the width. So brown wrapping paper would be actually better if you don't have to trace through.
And the great thing about freezer paper, I don't know if butcher paper is the same, but you can iron it onto things and it like fabric. Ooh. And it will stick.
Is it just because of the? I think it might be similar.
Because I know Lisa from Black Women Stitch. I think she uses it all the time. But I've had people, and I have a student who is trying it out, and it's so you can iron it to your fabric, but it's not permanent. Like so that it holds the pattern to your piece of fabric that you cut out. So that's really handy.
So it's like a slightly plasticky coated.
Yes.
Yeah. And now I'm gonna look what butcher paper. Butcher paper is more like a parchment, I think. So not.
And another thing that I've had students tell me, like I know Katie Cortman, she likes, because her husband is a doctor, she has that medical paper. When you go to a doctor's office, I don't know if it's the same in UK, but when we go to the doctor's office here, they have that paper that they put over the seat that they change out when new people come, and it's just a thin white paper, but again, it's narrow. It's like this, but it's thin. It's a little thinner than this, but it's thin, so it's kind of see-through, and she had access to it because her.
Yeah, I think here they use like a tissue, so it wouldn't be very good. Like a big tissue roll. Yeah. And you can, if you have contacts in the medical field, in operation theatres, they use like a non-woven paper, because everything gets thrown away nowadays because it doesn't get reused, and that is really good again if you can get that wholesale or something, and that I can imagine it being a bit like Swedish tracing paper, but again it's can you tape it, can you glue it, isn't it?
That's what you gotta kind of look at, because
I imagine even the freezer paper that you could tape it.
I don't know if you can tape. I don't have a lot of experience working with that either.
Yes.
So Steve said, during lockdown, I sewed a bunch of small pyramid-shaped weights, useful if I'm copying off paper patterns. Yeah, those little, I've seen those. There's some cute ones.
Oh yeah, little sort of triangle. Yes, they're really cute.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and
those are really cute.
I got Victor, and he says in catering stores you can buy really big rolls of baking paper. I bet that'd be really good if they're wider, isn't it, and longer? Yeah, for proper. And is it Tammy who is your student? Because she's saying I used medical table paper and I've used Swedish paper, but it's pricey. Yeah, and I think that always would put me off, because the whole point about pattern cutting is that it's the cheap stage of it. All you need is a bit of paper and your imagination and some skills you can learn with Tricia and me. But that's all you need.
We're becoming a pattern contest.
Yes, as well.
But yeah, that's true. So spending a lot on that. I know that Palmar and Flesh, which is it's a book, and they teach fitting and stuff. They have their own paper, and it's gridded. It's a tighter grid. And
are they UK or are they American?
They're American.
American, yeah. Now, which one is the There's a English one, and they are like everything is very perfect. Oh
Because
yes.
they do a lot of paper fitting and
Oh,
stuff.
nice. And
So they use it for like adjusting patterns that already are existing, you know, like adding in bits
Yeah.
and things. I'm trying to see if they have a picture of it, but yeah, it's
and Victor says you can tape the baking paper, but it's
good.
more difficult. You have to use painter's tape, which is like a masking tape. Yeah.
Painter's tape.
And
yeah, see, I don't know if you can see it, but it's got like a
Oh.
grid. So see how
Oh, yeah.
they're adding it to an existing, you know, it's adjusting
Yes.
existing. So they sell it. Because my friend she works for them and she sells the paper at conventions and things.
Yes.
And then lightweight painter's plastic for transferring paper or for transferring patterns, Les says. It's transparent enough to see through and it's less expensive than Swedish paper and it lasts very long. Interesting.
Yes.
Painter's plastic.
Yeah. I actually know what it is, I think. Just because we've done
Another kind of paper that I want to talk about is oak tag. Do you guys use oak tag? Okay.
I think we use it. Is it a bit thinner than manila?
It's you know, it's what I put my slopers on.
Oh yeah, that's what we call manila or card. Yeah.
Cardstock. Yeah. So people always ask me where to get this. I do offer. Sorry, it's another roll. I do offer. I give a small chunk because it's pricey. In my kits when I sell them along, and I give 5 yards of this paper because I really like using it. But this is kind of pricey and it's hard to get. I heard that Wowak sells maybe smaller amounts of it. I buy this in a big roll and it's more expensive than my blue dot. And it's great because it's a little bit thicker for your slopers where you want to have some extra weight, you know, like all of my slopers are with that. But, you know, so that it gives you a harder edge when you're tracing your slopers out. But, you know, if you can't get a hold of this, you know, poster board at your local.
Yeah, I was going to say A0.
Supply works fine. I've used that in a pinch for sure. You know, if it's smaller, if you're doing half size, you know, when I tell people at the boot camp is go use like a manila folder that you might have. You know, so you don't have to have this, but it is really nice. We call it oak tag. I think everywhere that sells it is called oak tag paper, but it's used in the passion. And there's different weights of it too. You can get it thicker and thinner, but
here it's called manila, and the problem is more. It's actually not that expensive. The problem is you have to buy a roll of it.
Yes.
So, and most of the time you don't need 35 meters. You need like 1.5 meters to do your patterns.
You need just a chunk to get your slopers done.
Yeah, if you're just doing like bodice, sleeves, and skirts, and even trousers, you can use, you know, in the craft shop, you get the A0 paper, like really thick card. You can use that, and then for the trousers, you can even tape it together, and you can get the color you want that way as well. So yes, a different color for different bodies, like blocks would be quite good, wouldn't it? But that's again, it probably works out not that cheap, but it's cheaper than buying a card.
The thing is, because you're not like, we have to buy a whole roll here as well, and I don't. And the other reason that I don't sell more of it, you know, is because when you fold it, I mean, obviously, I just. You know, like when you fold it, if I were to ship this to you and had to fold it, then it kind of defeats the purpose. So for, you know, I offer a small chunk to do the half scales on with my kits. But if I was trying to get you a bigger chunk, like I don't know how I would get that to you and not have it show up all folded and have a weird crease on it. But and you're not creating slopers as often as you're creating patterns, so you're not going to go through it as quickly.
Actually,
why do you want a sloper to be sturdier? Because when you have your slopers are something that you are constantly tracing off to create new patterns. So it's a template. So if you're trying to trace off a sloper using paper, it makes it a lot harder because you don't have that thicker edge to, you know, trace off. You
know what a really cheap alternative also would be is a cardboard box. If you get big enough, you know, that's works really well.
love every time we do the boot camp, because that is one of their first assignments is to put their little slopers that I give them, their glass, onto something thicker. And I'm like, you don't have to have, if they buy the kit for me, then they have the oak tag to do that. But if you don't have that, I'm like, just anything that's thicker, manila paper. And so people have come up with all kinds of cool stuff. Like they'll either print out their bodice on a cardstock out of the printer, which is genius. Or they use cardboard boxes like cereal boxes or cardboard boxes. Yeah, as long as it is a little bit thicker so it gives you that edge when you're tracing off. That is the main thing. So,
and if you are in London, Victor in my chat is just saying McCulloch in Wallace, now I'm Scottish, which is in Soho in central London. They sell the manila paper by the meter. And he says it's not that much more expensive per meter than buying a whole roll. So that's worth it as well. And sometimes it's used, it's sort of, sometimes you can find it again in, not hardware shops, but it's used in other industries as well. So it's sort of always worth exploring it a bit, who might have it. So that's sort of, it's really helpful if you're getting into your slopers or into your blocks, because
if you're beefing up your sloper sets, or you're going to be making some for like a line maybe, and you have all the different sizes that you want to have slopers for. I know as far as US, like I said, I mentioned WowWack. I heard just the other day, because somebody asked this in a class, if they can get smaller amounts of oak tag, and WowWack I believe has some. Richard the Thread in LA, I know they sell the rolls, and so does Gold Star Tools sell the rolls of both the oak tag and the blue dot alphanumeric paper, but I don't believe they sell it by the yard. I could be wrong on that. I know that Amazon, you can order the blue dot alphanumeric paper for like 10-yard rolls and things like that. So as far as if you wanted to get that, but I've been out like working and I needed a sloper, and I didn't have access. I couldn't wait to order something, and I just went to Staples, the office supply store, and was able to get some big sheets of poster board and use that, and it worked great.
It works fine, isn't it? Like that's always fine. Like look at other places, often not even sewing shops, like completely different shops. Like any sort of office supply shops are great. I'm just looking at in the UK.
Oh, and Marta says that she said, I was told today that you can get it at a medical supply store.
Oh, that's what I was thinking. It's like something like that. It's used really randomly. I've seen it.
So just always keep your eyes peeled. How else can we use
maybe also catering or something. I can see
that. I can see that.
Yeah, cheaper.
Always keep your eyes peeled for pattern cutting tools. So we are almost up on our hour. So
yes.
What other do we want to? We didn't talk about rotaries, because I know you had somebody who was asking about rotaries.
Oh yes, because I'm a 90% scissor, or she is, just because I'm a woven person, and I also, when I pattern cut, all my patterns always have been quite intricate and with lots of curves and small pieces and zigzags. So scissors I've always found easier, but I know a lot of people love rotary cutters, and you are one of them, Tricia.
So I will tell you, I was never, so this rotary, I don't know if you guys can see,
it's old.
It says DeMille. That's my grandmother's name. This is her rotary cutter she gave to me. She was a quilter when she passed away. And she also made garments, but I inherited this when she passed, and her mats and her rulers and all these things. And I'm like, I don't quilt, Grandma, but thank you. I'll take it. I never used my rotary cutter for pattern making or for cutting out garments until I worked in Las Vegas. A lady that I worked with only used rotary, and we had these mats. Actually, the mat on my table, my whole surface and my cutting table downstairs are self-healing mats. And there is a large cutting mat company. I'm not super familiar with them. They've been popular on Instagram. I get mine from like it's called GWJcompany.com. Fairly inexpensive for getting it big. A lot cheaper than like buying the big Olfa mats, which are a little bit more pricey. But she just used it for everything. She did her patterns with it. She cut out. And it's so fast and accurate because you don't have to lift it off the table to cut. And you can just have your weights and just cut right away. And I also love sew tights. If you guys are familiar with sew tights, which is, they're downstairs too because I was using them. They're magnets.
Oh,
and
yeah.
they like a magnetic cutting system where the cutting surface itself is a magnet, and then you have the magnet weights, and so you can just cut and it's not going to shift at all. My favorite as far as rotary, this is my favorite rotary size. There is one that's smaller, but this, you were talking about curves and things. This size makes it really easy to get into curves more than this size. So that's another added bonus. Plus, I'm left-handed. So I grew up, I think anybody who's left-handed is ambidextrous because we live in a right-handed world. So I would always lose my lefty scissors when I was young. So I learned how to cut with my right hand. But that's the one thing. I mean, not all rotary, some of them are ergonomic but I love this. I could use either hand. It's lefty or righty. There's no designation. So that's why I love the rotary. So it transformed me. Vegas transformed me. Like, I was like, it's so fast and it's so clean. Like, when you cut scissors, sometimes you can get those, those edges where you stop cutting.
Oh yeah, we were taught, there was a long lesson not to ever have any edges on your cutting.
Yeah. So with the rotary, it's just, it's real thin and it's real fast. So it takes some getting used to. And the one thing that I used to yell at people who were working with me or I was working with them is that you have to remember to close the blade. And there are some that will automatically close, but they're very sharp, right? I mean, we want them to be, so they could potentially be very dangerous. The other thing I want to mention about rotaries is that there's some cool ones. Like this is actually a pinking shear rotary. So instead of using pinking shears, I can use this. So when I'm cutting out things that fray a lot, or if it's a really fine material, using this instead of cutting and then using a pinking shear when I'm cutting it out is another way that I save, some time. Trisha's asking what size. I think this is the size 28 millimeter. This is 28. I think this is 45, this size. And then there's a smaller one. I don't remember how much the smaller one. I don't have one of those little tiny ones. I feel like this is like my favorite perfect size. I have, I do have shears as well, but honestly, I use shears and scissors so infrequently. I'm very awkward outside of my snips. I'm very awkward, like outside of my snips, or if I'm draping. Like if I'm draping and doing a fitting and like figuring out things on the form, then I want my shears and my scissors, because obviously I'm not gonna get in here with like my rotary mat. But other than that, everything and people often ask, the common question is, do I have a different rotary for pattern making or for fabric? No.
Oh, you don't?
They're downgraded. So if I'm gonna
but if you use
blade it.
Yeah.
But most of the time I just use whatever's around, and then when I cut something out of fabric, I change the blade.
Okay. So it's like
and then I save it for I also I use my old rotary blades for razors to cut to take things apart. And then there's I've talked about it on here before, steam-a-seam, like Stitch Witchery fusible stuff where it gets really sticky on the fabric. That will totally gum up your rotary. So I have a special rotary that is just for cutting out that, because it gets so gross and grimy and you can't really clean it. It doesn't really work. So I will downgrade my blades as I go. But I just use whatever. Yeah, but that's... And I'm patterning more than I'm cutting fabric, so it kind of...
But the same as scissors. You have your good scissors for fabric, and then I have 3, and they get slowly downgraded until they get sharpened, and then they start at the beginning again. So yeah. Yes, you never should mix the two of them, really. How much is, the blades cheaper now? Because they used to be really expensive.
There is one, we found one on Amazon that was pretty inexpensive. And I've never used the rotary sharpening ones.
Oh yeah, I've heard about that as well.
Yeah, I haven't tried those before. But like I said, I keep them for as long as I can, and I always save them. I don't really throw them out because I use them for other things. But Yeah, that is the thing, is finding the good deals on them. Olfa is very expensive, and Fiskars are very expensive. But there is one brand that and I can't remember it off the top of my head, but there is one brand that we found on Amazon that was pretty affordable, and you could get like, buy them in bulk. I usually buy them in bulk, which is like you were saying about your pins. Like you're kind of like, ooh, that's a lot of money, but then I don't have to buy blades for a while, so it's worth it to do that. Chris says pencil or marker. Pencil always, unless I'm teaching. The only reason, it's so funny because when I'm teaching, I'm using marker, and then people start also using marker, and if I am not filming, I am using a pencil, because the only reason I use a marker is so that you can see it on camera. I
try to sort of say it every few tutorials. I'm only using a marker because you can see properly. And again, it doesn't have to be fancy. Just a mechanical pencil from the stationery shop again. And
are you a mechanical pencil person? Because I like my mechanical.
Yes, I love them. Cheap ones.
I buy a whole box.
Yes, well, I use the refill ones.
Yes, me too, but I still buy a whole box because I don't stop to refill them, but then I do.
I've got a few, but even, like your normal lovely school pencils may be fine as well. Just sharpen and make sure it's an HB or
that's
2H.
That's the only thing, that's why I don't like using a regular pen, because you have to sharpen it all the time, because your line gets fatter as it goes down. Yeah. Sandra, and that's what I like the mechanical pencils for. Sandra says, when I upgraded to a really good rotary cutter, I use my old cheap rotary cutters to cut paper. Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. Same as scissors, isn't it?
I had more tools to talk about, but we're out of time. I knew we would when we started.
Yeah, and it's funny, we haven't actually talked about any of the tools on our table, isn't it? We just have gone on off on
I have like a whole bunch today.
Steam machines for about 20 minutes.
If you guys want, let us know. Maybe we'll do another tools one.
Yes.
Didn't get to it, but this was fun.
Yes, because we actually have to do another one about tools which are a waste of money, because we've only talked about stuff we love, isn't it?
We don't like. That's true. I mean, and you could go into dress forms.
I was thinking that's one of my waste ones, so you can talk about that.
Really?
Yes, the wrong dress form. So maybe, we got you excited. So let us know if you'd like us to talk about the negatives of tools. Things you don't need.
Part 2.
Yes.
So I'm seeing some people excited. Maybe we'll do a part 2. Maybe we'll do it next month. We'll see.
Yes.
We'll have to revisit this, because it was too broad of a topic, and we got too excited.
Yes. Let's do an hour on paper maybe next time would be as well.
Yeah, I mean, we can do just an hour on paper. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much. This was as always, a blast. It's always fun to hang out with you and hear what you guys have to say and the questions that you bring. We really appreciate you joining us today. Remember, PatternCon tickets for the volunteers start tomorrow. So we'd love to have you hang out and learn patterns with us in Charlotte this summer. Check that out in the link down in my bio. Make sure you're following both of us. We're now streaming on both channels.
Yes.
So, check us out. I know I tagged Charlotte on mine.
I have 2.
And
I put the PatternCon in as well, so people can...
Oh, thank you. And is there anything special that you have going on? I mean, you have your membership.
Yes, well, at the moment, if you want to join me, there's a link. You can learn to pattern cut with me. I have more of a fashion vintage angle than Tricia with her costume, but we're both really passionate about pattern cutting, so do have a look. You can learn with both of us. We're slightly different, but we both love pattern cutting, which why we get on so well.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much, and we will see you next time. We'll probably be back. We usually do this once a month, so join us towards the end of May. I know we picked a date, but I don't remember.
We did. It is the 22nd of May. We will see you then.
It's always a Thursday, so
always at 8 p.m. UK, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard, apart from when they're
that channel. Hopefully we'll see you then. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody.